Alright guys, this is Chatterbox Reviews. Coming to you guys with my review for Season 2 of House of the Dragon. Alright, so it's good to be back after a few weeks here on the channel. It's been a busy summer for me, so I haven't been able to get to as much stuff as I've, probably wanted to. But to be honest, there hasn't been a whole lot that I've really been eager to discuss. I think we're really seeing the effects of the strikes last year, right? I think especially now, but obviously, earlier in the year as well. And I think the rest of this year we're going to see that too. I mean, pretty lean for me in terms of shows here for the rest of the year and just in the last few months here. So, yeah, obviously I didn't cover as much as I wanted to. Probably would have done something for Hack Season 3, and I still might do that, by the way, because I did kind of miss that one. But, yeah, other than that, there hasn't been a whole lot. So, it is what it is. And 2025, I mean, it's looking crazy for the amount of shows and all that stuff that's kind of been delayed, and because of the strikes and everything that are coming out, and maybe the rest of this year too might we might see some surprises and stuff. So looking forward to it. But anyways, we're here for House of the Dragon Season 2, which arguably, I mean, obviously Rings of Power, I think, is coming back in a couple weeks now, or at the end of August, something like that. But other than Rings of Power, I mean, this was supposed to be, at least, and I'll get to this a little bit later, I don't think it was as big as what it could have been or should have been, but this was kind of the tentpole event of TV this year, was House of the Dragon coming back for Season 2, and like I said, I'll get to more of my thoughts on that. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this season, just judging it in general, but also what did you think about the impact this season had, the kind of event television that it kind of spurred or kind of created. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. And obviously, if you read the material, I have not, but I am kind of familiar with some things. I did, reviews for almost every episode of Season 1 with my buddy Greg, and he has read Fire and Blood, and obviously, the novels as well, the Game of Thrones novels. So he's kind of well versed in it, and that was a really cool perspective that we did for Season 1. And so he's kind of told me some things, and I've kind of looked into some things, but I'm really trying to stay away from any like the big spoilers. So if you had read the material, maybe spare me a little bit on that, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on how things are lining up as well to the material. So and if you enjoyed this review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. Would really appreciate that. Just recently hit 1,000 subscribers, so really appreciative of that, and obviously love to see the channel grow a little more in the future. So let's get into things then. Alright, so I want to start this one off with comparing this season to Season 1, and I think I can say pretty confidently that this is a step down from Season 1, and Season 1 really exceeded my expectations for the show. And I mean, I'm not in the minority for that. I'm sure a lot of people were really impressed with Season 1, perhaps some people more than me, but my expectations were not that high, and they were, very well exceeded. With Season 1, I believe is my third favorite TV show of the year in 2022 when it aired, so I was really impressed by it, and I think this is a step down. It's even hard to really compare it to Season 1 because I find myself thinking about it, and this is a very different season than Season 1, right? Season 1 covered a lot more time. We got all of those time jumps and was covering so much history and giving so much development for these characters, seeing them in different, literally like different chapters of their lives or times of their lives. I mean, really, I can't remember exactly. Was it episode 8? I believe it's episode 8, where we get the actual forms of every, single character here that we see in Season 2. So some of these characters, and the way they did episode 9 and 10 with the two different, one with the greens and one with the blacks, technically, some of those, Ewan Mitchell, for example, who plays Aemond, only had 2 episodes, I believe, or I guess he was in the finale too, right at the very end. But so he has maybe 2 and a little bit of time, worth of episodes in Season 1, and now we get 8 episodes of him in this one. So it's very, hard to compare the 2 seasons, and then, when you get to this one, it's very much, more focused. I mean, it takes place over a brief amount of time compared to Season 1. Season 1's literally years and years of time, and this one is, I mean, Hard to say, like a couple weeks maybe, right? I think maybe. I might be a little off there, but it's really not that long of a time. And so it's a very different season that way. But I just think quality-wise, just objectively looking at the seasons here, I think season 1 is just better. There's a few things that they did maybe better in this season, and the main thing I will say, and I've already kind of touched on this, but I think the performances were quite a bit better, or at least they took a step up. And what I mean by that is mainly the players like Emma Darcy, Olivia Cook, Ewan Mitchell for sure, Tom Glencarney, right? Some of these, and Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook have been around since episode 6 of season 1, I believe, so they've had a couple more episodes with these characters, but seeing them just in the role for the entire run of the season was really impressive, and I thought a lot of them took a big step up. Ewan Mitchell and Tom Glencarney specifically, I thought were really great. They were great in a little glimpse we got in season 1, but really, really great in season 2 here. And I thought just having that more time, right, for them to be in these roles was really great. So, yeah, I think they take a step up, and I think that's one of the main, improvements this season is just get more time with these actors or this version of the character, and it really lends itself well to these performances. So, really great. And Matt Smith was amazing also this season. I do think he was probably better in season 1 just because of the stuff that they gave him to do. This season was, he's very isolated almost the entire season. And so I could, see where that would be a little challenging. I saw some quotes that, they weren't the most positive. I really don't think he was like dunking on the writers or anything like that, like some people made it out to be. But it wasn't the most positive thing where he was saying, yeah, like I kind of wish I was with the rest of the cast filming some of these scenes. Instead, I was just in a room or in these kind of sequences, right? Which we've seen, the hallucinations, the just all those moments, right, where he's just alone in this castle in Harrenhal. And so it's a bit of a different performance, but he was great nonetheless, for sure. Matthew Needham, I really wanted to shout him out. I thought he was great as Laris. He didn't have a lot of time in season 1, if I recall correctly, but season 2, he's just so great, so sneaky and conniving. He really fills that kind of Littlefinger Varys role to me. I think we can all agree on that, right? I think he's kind of filling that mold, a little bit of Tyrion as well, right, with that kind of physical deformity, right, if you will, with his, club foot. Tyrion obviously being a dwarf or an imp, as they call him. And so you could see those kind of comparisons, and you could see where George, likes that type of character that is, on the outside kind of weak or vulnerable, but on the inside they use it to their advantage. And I think even Laris says that, says as much in this season when he's talking to Aegon, right? So I really liked Laris as well in this season. And obviously, good Steve Toussaint as well, really great. Eve Best, right? We only had her for about half the season, spoilers, but, I thought she was great too. So yeah, great performances all the way around here, and I think we did see a step up in that regard for this season for sure. I'll talk more positively about the season a little bit later, but now I just want to get to the main issue with this season before we go any further, because I think this really just captures everything else I'm going to talk about in terms of my criticisms and why this is a step down from season 1. And it's just dragged out. And I think that's the main issue with this season. So I have kind of two ways of looking at this, right? So the one way is that 8 episodes just didn't seem like it was enough for this season. It really seemed like, and it seemed like we were supposed to get 10 episodes for this season, right? Season 1 was 10, season 2 was supposed to be 10, but anyways, they changed it to 8 episodes, so it really felt like 8 episodes wasn't enough, especially in this finale, before the kind of end sequence. It really felt like, okay, cool, this is a decent episode 8, get ready for next week, because we're going to see episode 9 and then 10, there's 2 more episodes to go, right? But there isn't, and so it's only 8 episodes, and there's just not enough payoff for what they were building to within this season. Of course, I'm sure we'll see the payoff next season, and, as the show continues and probably wraps up in season 4 now, right? We'll see the payoff, but not within this season. So just judging the season as a whole, and I'm sure especially in hindsight, looking back on this in a couple years from now, it really kind of tarnishes or weakens this season specifically. It may not, tarnish the kind of arc or the story as a whole while the show is wrapped up, but this season specifically, it just is kind of weak because it's just not enough here. It's just not enough within these 8 episodes. Now, at the same time, the whole season felt like the writers were kind of holding back with everything here. Like, it's just any kind of significant development or major plot point that you could kind of see coming or that they were building to just never really came, right? It just kind of either fizzled out, or we just bog it down completely until we're kind of going at a snail's pace here, especially with Damon's storyline, which I'll talk about. And, right, so it's kind of slowing this down. We're at a snail's pace for some of these stories and some of these characters' development here. And so it just felt like they were holding back, and I just can't, not think that HBO is so pressuring the writers, Ryan Condal and the team, to really stretch this out because they really want to milk the show. Obviously, I mean, can you really blame HBO? No. But they do want, 4 seasons of the show, it sounds like, at least for now, is 4 seasons, despite there really not being enough material for 4 whole seasons. And so that's obviously probably one of the main reasons why this season is only 8 episodes, because they could only stretch it so far, right? And so when you only have enough material for probably about 2 whole seasons, really, if they kind of expedited season 1, maybe, I think they could have done 2 seasons, but definitely no more than 3. And yet they want 4 and they're going to make 4. So this is the problem I think that we're going to see even in season 3 as well and 4. It's really just stretching this material to as far as it can go, right, in order to kind of get as many seasons, as many episodes as possible. And so as a result, this season feels stretched out, which honestly, it could have worked out. Like, we still could have seen the payoff if it was 10 episodes. I mean, 2 more episodes to this arc that they were building to seemed very reasonable. But it was the fact that it's not 10 episodes, it's only 8 episodes, and yet they still tried to drag it out like this long, knowing that they wouldn't have enough time to pay it off, and they did it anyways, right? So that's the issue I have with this, right, is that not necessarily that they took their time or they dragged things out with this season, because, yeah, that could have been satisfying enough if we had a couple more episodes, and it was just kind of a slow burn type of approach to it. That would have been fine, but it's the fact that they did that. They chose to drag it out knowing that they only had 8 episodes, and ultimately knowing that a lot of this payoff and a lot of this build-up would then be seen next season and just get people to tune in to next season. And I have no doubt at all that next season will be more similar to this season, and it'll be probably dragged out, and yeah, we'll probably see payoff. I mean, just as the timeline is playing out, it looks like we'll probably see a lot of payoff in those first couple episodes, and then I would not be surprised at all. And again, I don't know the material though that well, so I'm not sure exactly what happens next. But if I were to guess, just looking at TV and my experience with watching TV shows and this type of deal, yeah, I mean, it's going to probably be a big payoff the first couple episodes, and then we're just going to drag things out again, especially if it's 8 episodes. Then they'll probably save the payoff until the final season. Then you got to tune into season 4 and so on, right? And maybe even a season 5. Who knows, right? Who knows? So, yeah, that's the issue with this season. I think it's just the approach was not satisfying enough, right? Knowing that they had to drag it out. And if they didn't have to drag it out, though, and they really were just being, honest to the story and what the material, they were just trying to serve the material the best way that they could and didn't drag things out so much this season, then yeah, you definitely could have done 8 episodes and had a really satisfying season. So just kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place here. And I don't necessarily blame Ryan Condal or the writers, because I do think that, HBO really, this was kind of them, probably pressuring them, trying to get 4 seasons of the show, and so obviously they weren't really allowed to show a lot of payoff or really get deep into the material here because they don't have a lot left after it. So that's kind of the main issue here with the season. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on this as well. I think this is pretty commonly agreed upon at this point that it is really dragged out this season. And so the one main one is the Damon storyline. And Damon's my favorite character for season one. Probably still my favorite character in, this kind of group of characters or this story of House of the Dragon. But this storyline, this season, very disappointing, very underwhelming to me. I'm just not really a fan of it at all. And I think this is really encapsulates kind of what I'm talking about with them dragging things out. I mean, this storyline, it was just episode after episode of the same kinds of things over and over and over again. And my main issue is the whole season they were trying to set up this whole thing of, will Daemon try to, go against Rhaenyra, turn his back on his now wife, right? Turn his back on his wife and take the crown for himself, take the throne, and be the king, right, that he always wanted, that Viserys kind of skipped him over for, right? And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I never questioned it for a minute. Never seriously considered that he would actually go against Rhaenyra and not back her in the end of the season, or at whatever the end of his arc, right, of this would be. I just never thought it would seriously happen. And of course, in the finale, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And to me, I really thought this was established in season one. Again, it's not because I know the material and I know what happens. I'm just watching kind of blindly, and I'm like, season one, they already established the fact that Daemon is supportive of Rhaenyra, his whole choice to marry her and be this. And again, ultimately, I mean, he's the king. He's the king consort, right? Or consort, is that what it is? Yeah, king consort, whatever. But he's with Rhaenyra, and she'll be queen, right? It's he can do a lot, right, in that chair, if you will, or in that position of being with, married to her and being, the king consort. So with that, I just never bought into this. And the whole season, the whole plot line of his story this season really only functions on the fact that there's maybe a chance that he doesn't back Rhaenyra and that he does go against her and really go against what they set up in season one. And to me, I just never bought it. Never bought it for a second. And so a lot of this, stuff, again, the kind of back and forth with him, does he want it? Does he not want it? Is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? Never bought into it. Just never bought into the game. And so to me, it feels like a lot of time wasted here. And it just went on for way too long. Without him communicating with her. I mean, what was that, right? Honestly, the whole, at least after episode 2 or 3, right? Definitely 3. After episode 3, him sending a single raven to her, just maybe an update or, anything, any news of him and his work at Harrenhal, and a lot of this season would just completely fall apart. It's just such a convenient little thing for the plot of this season and for Rhaenyra's side of things as well, that she just doesn't know what's happening with Daemon. And, obviously the reason is that she, doesn't want to really push Daemon, because she thinks that he might turn on him. And she, says multiple times throughout the season, we have to go on as if he doesn't exist, right? Or as if he's, turned on me, or, we have to go on without him, basically. But it's just so convenient. It's so convenient. It'd be so much easier for her to just swallow her pride, and she really has no reason not to later in the season when they're getting desperate. Really? She really still can't reach out to Daemon or do something? And the whole finale scene was just kind of laughable to me. It's she shows up on Cyrax and, gives him the ultimatum, which was an awesome scene, really tense. It was a good scene. And great acting from both Emma Darcy and Matt Smith. And she gives him the ultimatum, are you going to support me? Is this army you've built here for me? And this kind of thing. And it's that scene could have happened 5 episodes earlier, or maybe 4 episodes earlier, and solved everything. A lot of these issues that she was having and a lot of the material for these episodes could have been completely voided if she just did that. And so it just seemed very convenient to me that it went on for episodes and episodes of them just not communicating with each other. And again, I never bought into the fact that he would, betray her anyways. And so, yeah, just really frustrating. And then the vision sequences, to me, were just off-putting. They were a little kind of, I don't know. I just really didn't enjoy them. I don't think they really fit into the context of House of the Dragon or into this like Game of Thrones. I mean, of course, we had that with I don't want to say her name wrong. Is it Melisandre or something like that from Game of Thrones? The red-haired woman that's with Stannis, right? But anyways, we had a little bit of that, of course, with her, and kind of like the witch, the whole concept of that idea. And so we had a little bit of that with her in Game of Thrones, but House of the Dragon so far didn't really seem like that kind of vibe. We weren't going there in those places, and so these vision sequences were just a little off-putting to me. And again, they were just very repetitive. It was just very much the same thing over and over and over again, and that's probably the main reason why I kind of grew sour of them. It wasn't necessarily just having these sequences, but it was just the fact that they went on and were very repetitive by the end of the season. And then, of course, that finale sequence, right? Everyone's kind of talking about that. That was a big kind of focal point of that finale, of him seeing Daenerys and seeing the White Walkers, right? And the whole winter is coming. But it felt kind of random to me. Again, I'm not, really familiar with the material here and kind of, all the lore and stuff behind that and what that means. But to me, I didn't see that, I just felt like that was kind of random, kind of came out of left field, where he's seeing this future prophecy, and they of course use that vision and this new knowledge that he has, or this new foresight, to justify his choice to back Rhaenyra and at the end of the day, back her and support her and pledge himself and the army that he's now built to her. But again, I didn't think he needed any reason to justify that, because he had already made up his mind in season 1. And so to me, yeah, okay, you could say that sequence was necessary for him to see the greater evil that's ahead, to see that winter is coming, that we need someone like Rhaenyra on the throne while, when that happens in the future. The whole, A Song of Ice and Fire, right, that Viserys was telling Rhaenyra as well. But again, we didn't need it. We didn't need it. We didn't need to justify Daemon to back Rhaenyra, because he already was going to do that anyways. So to me, just kind of unnecessary. But of course, cool for the fans, for the lore and all that stuff. And I hate to think that they did it for that main reason of just, oh, let's put something in there for the guy, for the fans who watch Game of Thrones for 8 seasons. Let's put something in there for them. So I hope that isn't the main reason. But anyways, wasn't a fan of the Daemon side of things at all this season, and we're just really unfortunate, because there could have been so many great interactions with him and Rhaenyra and all these other characters, and we just didn't see, and even his daughters, right? And we didn't see any of that in this season, because he's so isolated in Harrenhal, doing the same thing over and over again. But again, it's just a product of stretching things out, right? Again, they could have easily solved this whole thing by communicating him and Rhaenyra after a few episodes, but of course that doesn't help them in stretching the story out and making another season of television out of it. So this is what happens. Okay, so some great moments and sequences with the dragons throughout the season here, and this is something that I don't think Game of Thrones could ever do, right? Obviously later in the show, when the dragons were bigger, which is pretty inaccurate, of course, to the lore, as we're learning now with House of the Dragon. But anyways, Drogon was massive, right? Probably bigger than Vhagar, at least it seemed like that in the later seasons of Game of Thrones, which of course he would not be at all. But it is something that we never quite saw with Game of Thrones. We never saw 2 dragons going at it, or maybe we do with when the Night King resurrects the one dragon at the end. I can't remember exactly, but very little, right, battles between dragons or fights here between dragons. And this is something that the House of the Dragon really can show us, and that's why I think a lot of people, including myself, loved episode 4 and the whole dragon fight sequence, right, when we had Meleys, and then Aegon comes in on his dragon, and then of course Vhagar with Aemon. So really great sequence, and of course Game of Thrones, I mean, a lot of the seasons, probably not the later seasons of the show, but a lot of the seasons are going to be hard to top for House of the Dragon. I just don't know that it will, but this is something that they can do that is kind of unique to House of the Dragon, and I think they do it really well in episode 4, of course. Just so riveting, so intense, and to have that kind of twist that Aegon shows up out of nowhere, and then of course that Aemon burns his own brother, and puts him down to the ground, essentially, in his eyes at the time, probably killing him. And so just a fascinating sequence, a really great, sequence for Rhaenys to die as well with Meleys. And so just a great sequence there with that dragon fight. And then I thought the bastards in the dragon pit in episode 7, I believe, that scene really stands out as well. Because again, maybe that is more along the lines of something we would see in Game of Thrones, but not even quite, right? Because we see multiple dragons in that episode, and, to see Vermithor attack everybody in the dragon pit, we never saw that, right? And I feel like they really did a good job in showing, again, the sheer size of these dragons, how powerful they are to just the normal man just running around, scared for their lives, and he's just eating them and burning, just incinerating them. So I thought the dragon pit sequence was really great. It's just really, fascinating stuff to see, would the dragons actually accept any of these bastards? And of course we see 2 of them, end up, taming the dragons, if you will, and becoming riders. So really great sequence there. And I just have to compliment the effects work, obviously, on all of these dragons. I was really blown away by season 1, how good they did with that. And I think this season, save for maybe one scene, it was the one scene when Rhaenyra and Adam meet up and their 2 dragons are kind of on the beach there. Sea Smoke, right when Adam becomes the rider of Sea Smoke, and Rhaenyra goes to confront him in that episode, episode 7, I think. That scene seemed a little off with the way that the dragons look, but other than that, really great effects work the entire season, and really great job with showing the dragons and showing these different characteristics, making them look different, making them look cool. So just fascinating stuff with all that. So really have to compliment the effects work. Just overall with the season, everything looked good, but specifically the dragons just were really impressive. Some really great stuff there. And like I said, for something like that can kind of separate them from Game of Thrones, I think that's a big element for them to deliver on, and they definitely did in this season for sure. So now I want to talk a little bit about the finale episode, just because that's obviously the most recent thing. I watched it yesterday, so obviously I want to dive into a little bit like that. So as an episode in general, I think the finale was pretty great. I think there was a number of scenes. As I was watching the episode, I said, that's a really great scene. That's another really great scene. That's another really great scene. So there's just a lot of great scenes and sequences throughout the episode. I thought the writing was really strong. A lot of these, kind of character interactions were really, really well done. So yeah, I just thought as an episode in general, if this was like a episode 5 or 6 of the season, I would give it a really positive review. I thought it was great. But as a finale episode, it was pretty underwhelming, right? I think we can all agree on that. It was pretty underwhelming. And this is, again, why I say, if I didn't know that the season was 8 episodes until probably the last 5 to 10 minutes of this episode, I would have thought for sure, okay, well, we'll see you next week for episode 9, right? That's just the way that this episode seemed up until the very end of it. And so it was just very underwhelming to me as a finale. And then, of course, you get to the last 5 to 10 minutes, and everyone is saying, glad I just watched the trailer for season 3, which is, I think that's hilarious. But it is true. I mean, let's be real, right? It is true. It really does feel like even kind of like a montage, right? Like it is a montage of a thing, but to me, it feels more like a montage than a trailer, because we do see some elongated sequences and scenes here, but it really is just like this whole long sequence, about 5 to 10 minutes of stuff that it's like, okay, this is sick. Like, when are we going to see this? And then it just cuts to the credits, and it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll see in season 3 for all of this stuff that they're setting up. So, really weird. I don't know if I can't even recall a time where I saw a finale like this, and the ending of it was just a montage for everything that was going to happen in the next season. Like, just very strange to me. Honestly, I'm trying to think as I said that, thinking back to a season, but honestly, I can't really. Like, Walking Dead season 6 finale was something like that, where they kind of had the big build-up, and then, of course, it ends on a massive cliffhanger. We don't know who Negan killed, but it wasn't, we didn't get a montage of what was to come in season 7. But it's kind of a similar thing, I guess. It's kind of like a lot of buildup and all this stuff, and then there's no payoff, and you have to tune in next season. So maybe that's the closest thing I think I can think of, but this tops it. I mean, this was just really strange to do something like this with this montage at the end. If anything, like, just save this for season 3, episode 1. I'm just not sure why we had to see everything that was going to happen in season 3 as if they were trying to sell us on the next season while we just watched 8 episodes of this season and never got any payoff, really, for much of it. So, yeah. Should have been the payoff for this season. I thought minimally we were going to see a battle at Harrenhal in this finale. It really just seemed like everything, all roads were leading to Harrenhal at the end of the season in the finale, and just never came. Never got anywhere close to seeing that in this finale episode. So, yeah, that's kind of what it is. That was the end of the finale there. And, of course, if we saw this payoff, if we saw this Harrenhal battle, again, not familiar with the material. I'm not sure what happens, how big it is, or how long it is, but if they showed this payoff, of course, then they couldn't stretch the material into 4 seasons like HBO wants them to. I'm assuming, at least, that this is a pretty big battle and a pretty significant, probably, plot point to the overall story, is this kind of confrontation at Harrenhal, or at least that's what they're building up to. That's what they're building it as. And it seems like if they did it in season 2, they probably wouldn't be able to stretch the story into 4 seasons. And that's what they got to do, because that's probably what HBO wants. So that's what it is. Again, just comes back to the point. We're stretching things out. We're getting more seasons of a show that maybe the material doesn't really lend itself to, which obviously is a big issue here. But anyways, still some great television to be had, in this season for sure. So that's what it is. Those are my thoughts on the finale. Like I said, as an episode, several great scenes, great sequences throughout, but a very underwhelming finale episode to a 8-episode season here for sure. So overall, though, I want to end with, it's still an impressive season of television at a scale unmatched by basically anything except for maybe Rings of Power, right? Like maybe Rings of Power. Just because of the sheer budget that Amazon puts into it. I mean, the effects work and everything with that show. I have not watched it, and I really have no interest in watching it from what I've heard and from what I've seen of season 1. But, you can't deny that, of course, the effects work, just everything, the scale is just massive with Rings of Power. So, yeah, maybe you could say Rings of Power, but even this, I mean, it's a little... At least to me, in my eyes, the quality here is a little bit of a step up, I would say, for Rings of Power. It's HBO. This is, premier television, right? And so, to me, I think it's kind of unmatched as well. So even if the season was a little underwhelming, it was stretched out, like I said, I have my issues with it, we still got to appreciate, how impressive it is that this type of television, is made for us, right? With Game of Thrones being on for so long, really impressive stuff. And so to have something like that again with House of the Dragon, I think it's really great. So obviously, though, like I said, HBO could have done a lot better. Still really impressive, but they could have done a lot better, especially considering that this was their, biggest show this year. Biggest anything this year, really, for HBO. This was their show of the year, which usually they have, several or a few, right, of these types of big tentpole shows. But to me, this is really the biggest one or the only one. And so to me, I was expecting a little bit more. But again, maybe the strikes... even though this wasn't really affected by the strikes last year because of the time they filmed, they're using almost exclusively all British actors, and so they weren't in SAG, so that wasn't affected, and I think it was filmed after the writer's strike. So you can't really blame the strikes, but maybe you could give them a benefit of the doubt, maybe that this didn't turn out as good as it could have been. But anyways, for the biggest tentpole event of the year, I was just overall with the marketing and the attention that the season got, I don't think it was anywhere close to season 1. And of course, that's to be expected, right? It's like season 1 of Game of Thrones spinoff is back. Of course, everyone's going to come out for that. But this season, I don't know, there's just something missing in terms of the kind of zeitgeist or the environment here. of TV fans and House of the Dragon, fans, the kind of fandom. I don't know. I just felt like I didn't see as much buzz about the season. And so I don't know if that's on HBO for the marketing or what it is exactly. But yeah, just kind of underwhelmed by this of what it was supposed to be. Probably the biggest event in TV this year. So that's just me, though. Maybe I'm completely off, and maybe everybody was really obsessed with this, and maybe I just didn't see it. But to me, watching TV and just kind of the landscape for the last several years now, I was kind of underwhelmed by this, and just not seeing as many people talk about this show from week to week like they did in season 1. So, okay, so let's end off now and end off this review now with season 3. One last thing I just wanted to say, and I've seen a lot of people say this, so I just wanted to comment on this as well. It's probably going to be 2026, right? Or not even probably. I think it's confirmed to be in 2026 that we're going to get season 3 now. And I have to make this point. Game of Thrones released a new season each year, I believe, for the first 6 seasons, right? And then it was the last 2 were kind of a little off. But for 6 years, we had a new season of Game of Thrones each year. And my question is, what happened to that? And I think a lot of people, ask this question is, what happened to a new season each year? And again, yeah, it's clear that this show, as impressive as it is, like I said, this is, the top of television. The scale is massive on a show like this, but so was the scale of Game of Thrones as well, right? And so it's kind of, now the only thing you could say for House of the Dragon is probably there's more effects work to be done on this show than Game of Thrones with the dragons. I can only imagine the amount of work that goes into those dragons. And like I said, they look freaking awesome. So yeah, I'm sure that takes time, and maybe that's part of it, but I don't know. I feel like this is, and this is larger than just House of the Dragon, obviously. This is the biggest trend lately is, these shows waiting 2 years in between seasons. Even The Last of Us, right, is another example of that, where we got that, early 2023, and now it's coming out in 2025, and that's just assumed. I mean, you never would expect Last of Us Season 2 to come out the next year anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the scale, maybe it's the effects work, and a big thing, too, is that there's so much effects work now to be done, and it's not like the effects industry has grown, along with TV and movies, and the streamers and all this stuff in the last, 5 years or so. And so, yeah, there's a lot of effects work to be done and not enough people to do it. So that's obviously a big deal with this, but it would be nice to see season 3 in 2025, but alas, that's what it is. So we'll see it in 2026. And of course, I'll be there. I'm looking forward to it. Because I do really love some stuff of House of the Dragon in this season. So obviously I'll be back for season 3. So love to hear your guys' thoughts on season 3. Any of the stuff I've talked about, of course, love to discuss with you guys in the comments. But that'll just about do it for my review for House of the Dragon. I may talk a little bit more about it probably towards the end of the year when I talk about my TV shows and stuff like that. But I could definitely see it within my top list of TV shows at the end of the year. So really impressive stuff. Some really great sequences and moments of that kind of stuff. So I could definitely see that happening, but for now, I'll leave it there for my thoughts of season 2. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this one, and we'll see you then in my next review.